Hello everybody. In this video I wanted to showcase a feature which is relatively new for scheduling jobs. So this is really important if you're doing scheduled migrations or data synchronizations, or if you want to have automated tests that kick off at a certain point throughout the day. A job is really just a way to originate an event that then triggers one or more server functions or API functions, and it basically kind of kicks off integration processes. So with jobs, you can either kick off functions in parallel or in sequence. And so here I have an example of a sequential where I'm just going to kick off a single function. But if you wanted to have a number of server functions kind of trigger one after another, you can add them in this array. Or if you want them to kind of trigger off in parallel, you can have it be parallelized and then you can trigger them all at the same time. So what you have to do to configure a job is you have to specify what set of functions you want to be triggered. And you do that by referencing the function ID, much like in other parts of the Poly platform. So here I have our function that we used in the integration track. It was a custom order API for a partner to be able to submit, I believe we did t-shirt orders. And so here I can just grab this ID. And so this is going to be the server function that I trigger. And because you can write whatever logic you want within server functions, you effectively have a way to trigger off whatever you'd like with it. So I'll grab this ID, and then we'll go to the job. I'll specify that ID here. And then within the event payload, you can specify whatever you want. Now this is going to be static content based on this job. So if it is an automated test trigger, you either want the server function to kind of retrieve the information it needs or use Vari to have dynamic data, or you want to hard code it in here. So there's a little bit of a design decision to be made here, but you have the option of supplying event payloads. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the same one we used in other examples, and I'll be right back once I have it populated. So I've gone ahead and populated it here, and if you'll remember, it's the same payload that we used in both executing webhooks as well as testing out the creation of this function. Great. So now the next thing, you can specify headers, you can specify params if you'd like. This is really more so useful if you're trying to mimic a web API call that has these configured. And then we'll give it a name. So we'll say something like create t-shirt order every 3 minutes. Okay. And then for the scheduler, here we get to specify whether it's a one-time trigger or if it's periodical. So one-time triggers are meant to be something that you just kind of execute and you can execute it on command. And then periodical is meant to be something that runs like on a cadence. And then you can also schedule it kind of in advance, right? So you can do a one-time, but schedule to execute on Tuesday at 2 in the morning, because that's where we want the migration to happen. So you have that flexibility here as well. So for the value for periodical, you would use a cron expression. If you're not familiar with it, I'm going to go ahead and just dive into that just for 1 second. And if you are, feel free to skip this section and just come back in about 30 seconds. So for learning how to use cron, I would just recommend asking ChatGPT. You can ask expressions like, for example, can you write me a cron time expression which represents 3 minutes indefinitely? You could see that it basically breaks it down for you. You could do something like this. How about every Tuesday at 8 a.m.? How would I do that? So you can see just, it'll come up with the expression. To be honest, I'm not intimately familiar with this format. It's something that I'm picking up, but you can see that you have a lot of power and flexibility to decide kind of when these should be scheduled. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this one for every 3 minutes, and I'll see you back in Postman. So here we are back in Postman. I'll go ahead and paste that cron expression, and then we'll go ahead and hit send. I did forget about this limitation. So on a per instance setting, we do have limitations. And so in this public instance that's managed and operated by Poly, we set that minimum to be 5 minutes. So I'll go ahead and just bump this to every 5 minutes. Okay, and we could see that we have our job created successfully. And so it will also give you a few additional parameters. Like, for example, you can control whether it's on or off by managing the enabled attribute. It'll tell you what environment ID it's running in. You'll also see the next execution time. So we have a few minutes here before it executes. And then I'll show you what happens once it's run. So I'll see you in a few. Okay, so we've let it run, and I actually got sidetracked, so you might notice I'm wearing a different shirt. It's actually a different day, but basically this is our configuration where we left off. And now you can actually go to /executions, and here we could see all the jobs that have run. So this is kind of a historical view of what's happened. And each execution is going to have an ID. It's going to reference a job. It's going to be able to tell you how long it took to run it. These ones probably took 13 seconds because of the wake up of the server function. And then you could see, the function that was invoked. You could see the payload that was used to trigger it, the headers, the params. You could see what the response was. We don't log the actual data that comes back. So we just log the status code, and then we have an execution status that allows you to, filter and see these jobs. And then you can see a little bit of configuration. So it was sequential, it finished, it was processed on this time, and it finished at this time. So with that, thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully this was useful. In summary, you can use jobs to basically trigger custom functions, server functions, and that could be used for batch synchronizations, migrations, daily, test runs, and all kinds of great use cases for using Poly. So thank you very much. Have a nice day.